cameras were never supposed to catch this. Rides failing in real time, metal snapping, passengers still strapped in. But the footage exists. We count them up, from level 1 incidents to level 6 disasters. Let's go! We start at Knott's Berry Farm in California on a clear September afternoon in 2009. A 12-year-old boy in the front row. A launch cable under 18 months of neglected maintenance. And a sound his mother will never forget. On September 15, 2009, Kyle Wheeler and his father Russell took their seats in the front row of the Xcelerator at Knott's Berry Farm, a coaster famous for accelerating from 0 to 82 miles per hour in just over 2 seconds before rocketing straight up a 205-foot steel tower. Kyle's mother Anita stood below with her camera smiling. Seconds after the launch sequence began, a thick steel cable, the same one designed to propel the train forward, snapped. The moment was captured on video. You can see the cable whip loose and send metal fragments flying in every direction. The train jerked forward, began to climb, and then slid back down into the station. Kyle took the full force of the cable across his left leg. It split the fiberglass car in half and lacerated deep into his muscle. Russell was showered with debris and nearly struck in the face. Anita later wrote in an online forum that she had watched what she believed was her son and husband dying in front of her eyes. Kyle endured multiple surgeries over the following months, repairing shredded tissue, grafting skin, and slowly relearning to walk through painful physical therapy. The state investigation found that 18 of the 20 launch magnets beneath the train had been sheared off by the force of impact, and that the cable showed gross amounts of metal fatigue. The manufacturer had recommended monthly cable inspections. Knott's had inspected the ride every 6 months and was 3 weeks behind even that reduced schedule at the time of the accident. The Wheeler family settled confidentially with Cedar Fair in 2011. The settlement covered over $60,000 in medical costs at the time, plus future surgeries. The Xcelerator was rebuilt with a new launch system and still operates today at the same speed, the same drop, and the same promise of safety that failed one afternoon when the cable ran out of time. The Lightwater Valley Ultimate in the UK delivered a different kind of horror in 2014. Europe's longest roller coaster was running a normal summer Saturday when the train struck a deer that had wandered onto the course. Passengers in the front cars were hit without warning by the impact at close to 50 miles per hour. Many initially thought the debris was part of the ride until the reality of what had struck them set in. The ride completed its full circuit before returning to the station. Staff cleaned and reset the track, and the attraction reopened within 30 minutes. The park explained afterward that wild animals occasionally breached the perimeter fence overnight. A statement intended to reassure the public that produced the opposite effect for every person who had been sitting in those front cars. At Warner Brothers Park in Madrid in 2005, 23-year-old Francisco Javier Infante visited the haunted hotel attraction with his sister Sarah, his girlfriend, and other family members. The ride ends in a large room where guests sit on a moving bench designed to create intense vertigo and disorientation. According to the park's initial account, Francisco suffered a panic attack, lifted his own safety bar, stood up, and was struck by ride machinery. His sister, who was seated beside him, told a completely different story. She said the safety bar lifted with almost no resistance, that Francisco became disoriented, believing he was standing against a stationary wall without realizing the entire room was in motion, and that the machinery struck him once, then again, while other passengers screamed for the ride to stop, and it kept running through its full programmed cycle. The family's most disturbing question at trial was simple. If security cameras were monitoring the ride in real time, why did nobody watching those cameras stop the ride while he was being fatally injured? The court later ruled the death was the park's fault, and found both the maintenance manager and the security camera supervisor personally negligent. Francisco did not die because of anything he did. He died because the systems watching over him chose not to act. A harness that opened mid-ride on a Spanish coaster called Inferno, a war veteran placed in a seat with no restraint that could hold him, and a woman whose family watched her fall 75 feet from a roller coaster after telling the operator the restraint did not feel secure. Level 2. At Tibidabo Amusement Park in Barcelona, in 2010, 4 teenagers aged 14 and 15 were riding El Pendulo, a giant arm that swung riders over 100 feet into the air at speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour. At the peak of its swing, the entire anchorage system at the base failed. The massive screws holding the arm to its concrete foundation snapped simultaneously, and the whole structure crashed to the ground, falling onto an adjacent ride that was fortunately empty. All 4 teenagers were trapped under the wreckage. A 15-year-old girl died at the scene. Another was airlifted with multiple broken bones. The ride had been inspected 1 month earlier and cleared. Engineers examining the wreckage concluded that the anchor bolts had simply failed under accumulated stress that no visual inspection had detected. Tibidabo Amusement Park had operated for over 100 years without a single fatal accident before that evening. The record ended because of a few broken screws. At Terramítica Park in Benidorm, Spain in 2014, an 18-year-old tourist from Iceland was riding the Inferno roller coaster when his over-the-shoulder harness allegedly opened mid-ride. He was thrown from his seat and fell to the ground below. He died in the ambulance on the way to hospital. A British tourist who witnessed the aftermath told reporters that her own daughter had been on the same ride in the same seat just 5 minutes before the accident. The park insisted the ride was certified safe and checked daily. Investigators focused on whether the harness had experienced a hidden mechanical failure or whether it had simply not been properly confirmed as locked before dispatch. The ride was named Inferno, which is Catalan for hell. For that family on holiday from Iceland, the name became something they will never be able to separate from what happened to their son. On July 19, 2013, 52-year-old Rosa Esparza boarded the Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas with her family, including her daughter seated in the car directly in front of her. Before the ride dispatched, Rosa expressed concern to the ride attendant that her T-bar restraint had only clicked once and did not feel secure. A witness waiting in line heard the entire exchange and later testified that the attendant told her that as long as she heard it click, she was fine. The ride launched. On the first major drop going into a sharp banked turn, the restraint released, and Rosa was ejected, falling 75 feet and striking a metal support beam before landing on the roof of a tunnel below. Her daughter turned around during the drop and saw her mother upside down, feet in the air, gripping the restraint with both hands before she disappeared. When the train returned to the station, Rosa's family was still on board. The park had to be searched before her body was located almost an hour later. Six Flags closed the Texas Giant for months, reopened it with redesigned restraints and seatbelts on every seat, and subsequently added seatbelts to coasters at multiple other parks in their network. Rosa had told them it did not feel right. She was told she was fine. Level 3 and goes to Disneyland on September 5, 2003. A maintenance crew tightened most of the bolts on a wheel assembly on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, not all of them, and the train that went out the next morning killed a 22-year-old man inside a tunnel. At Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom in 2007, 13-year-old Caitlin was in line for her second ride on the Superman Tower of Power Drop Tower when a steel cable snapped during ascent and coiled around her legs and neck. The operator delayed hitting the emergency stop for a critical 10 seconds. In those seconds, the gondola reached the tower's peak and entered freefall mode. As the car dropped at 54 miles per hour, the broken cable pulled taut around her legs and the tension caused devastating injuries that resulted in the amputation of both feet above the ankles. The investigation found that maintenance technicians had been applying cornstarch to the cables to reduce slippage instead of using the cotton rags specified in the manufacturer's manual. The cornstarch caused accelerated corrosion. Kentucky subsequently banned miners from operating thrill rides entirely as a direct response to what had happened that afternoon. On September 5, 2003, Disneyland's Big Thunder Mountain Railroad killed 22-year-old Marcelo Torres when a maintenance error from days earlier finally came apart inside a tunnel. 2 bolts securing a left guide wheel assembly had not been properly tightened, and a safety wire meant to lock them in place was missing. As Train 2 entered a tunnel incline, the loose assembly detached. The rear axle jammed, and the front of the train was forced downward while the back slammed upward into the tunnel ceiling. The force ripped the connecting bar to the first passenger car, which then rocketed into the underside of the derailed locomotive. Torres was in the front row. His ribs were fractured, his lungs lacerated, and his blood loss was catastrophic. 10 other riders were injured. Park staff later admitted they had heard unusual noises from Train 2 during earlier cycles that morning, but assumed the recent service had resolved any issues and kept operating. It was Disneyland's first fatal ride accident since 1998, and it happened because 2 bolts were left loose. In Karachi, Pakistan on July 15, 2018, a brand new amusement park called Ascari had opened just days earlier to families excited to be among the first through the gates. The Discovery Pendulum ride was still in its trial phase. At around 7:30 in the evening, the main arm snapped 40 feet in the air. A 12-year-old girl named Kashaf Dukhtar was killed instantly. More than 20 others were seriously injured. The park's manager admitted afterward that no government officials had ever visited to inspect any of the rides because Pakistan had no laws requiring them to. The rides had been imported from China and installed without any regulatory oversight of any kind. Park management was reported to have left the scene immediately after the collapse. The government ordered all amusement parks in the province shut down for inspection. For Kashaf's family, the shutdown arrived after she had already been buried. The Mindbender at West Edmonton Mall derailed at 60 miles per hour inside an indoor shopping complex and killed 3 people. A roller coaster in Mexico City that was 58% operational continued sending passengers out until the day a car broke away mid-loop and fell 33 feet. Level 4. On June 14, 1986, the Mindbender at West Edmonton Mall's Galaxyland Indoor Amusement Park was running a full train when operators briefly shut it down after hearing unusual noises. Inspected it, found nothing, and cleared it to resume. Minutes later, the 4th car derailed midway through the final loop. Traveling at approximately 60 miles per hour, it struck a concrete pillar, and the impact threw 4 riders onto the mall's concrete floor 25 feet below. 3 died instantly. The sole survivor, Rod, landed behind a barrier with 2 broken legs, a broken pelvis, a punctured lung, and a broken shoulder. He spent 6 months in hospital relearning to walk. The failure traced to 4 improperly installed cap screws in the wheel assembly, a manufacturing defect that had never been detected across the ride's entire operational history. The Mindbender reopened in 1987 with shortened trains, added seatbelts, and anti-rollback systems. Rod survived and has spent decades since requesting a public memorial plaque at the mall. As of the writing of this script, that request remains unanswered. On September 28, 2019, the Quimera roller coaster at La Feria de Chapultepec in Mexico City was operating, as it had for 22 years, when the last car of a 5-car train derailed mid-loop and plunged 33 feet to Sinde, the ground. 2 young men died instantly from severe head trauma. 2 women survived with serious injuries. Maintenance logs examined after the accident revealed the park had known about corroded tracks, misaligned joints, and screws that did not meet the ride's specifications for an extended period. Daily safety checks had been routinely ignored entirely. The ride was operating at 58% structural integrity on the day it finally gave way. The park's operating license was immediately revoked, and it permanently closed on October 13, 2019. Demolition crews dismantled the site by 2023, and it was replaced with an urban park. Attendance at Mexico City amusement parks dropped 30% in the aftermath. The Quimera's remaining structure was eventually shipped to Indiana Beach in the United States for refurbishment. A haunted house attraction in Hong Kong where a 21-year-old man wandered into a backstage maintenance area and was struck by moving ride mechanics. A roller coaster in France, where the park manager had the safety bars illegally ground down a year before a woman fell to her death from the same seat he had modified. Level 5. In October 2017 at Ocean Park, Hong Kong, during a preview event for the annual Halloween festival, a 21-year-old man identified by his surname Chung entered the Buried Alive haunted attraction. The concept involved entering a coffin-shaped slide that deposited riders into a single-player maze experience. Somewhere inside, Chung made a wrong turn and wandered into a backstage maintenance area that visitors were never meant to access. Police believe he was struck by moving mechanical parts of the ride. Staff found him unconscious 5 minutes after he entered the attraction. Resuscitation efforts failed, and he was confirmed dead at hospital. A structural engineer who commented on the incident noted that any properly designed haunted house should have only one path through it specifically to prevent exactly this kind of disorientation, and that any backstage maintenance area should be physically locked against public access. Neither condition had been met. It was the first fatal accident at the park's Halloween event since the festival began in 2001. On July 4, 2020, 32-year-old Elodie Duval visited Parc St. Paul in northern France with her partner Michael, her sister, and her 2-year-old son Alan, whose birthday they were celebrating. Elodie and Michael boarded the Formula One Wild Mouse roller coaster. What they did not know was that the park manager Jalis Campion had ordered the seatbelts removed from the ride the previous year, claiming they were not a real element of safety. He had also ordered the first locking notch on each lap bar to be ground down, ostensibly to prevent larger guests from boarding. Both modifications were made after the ride's annual safety inspection, and neither was disclosed to safety authorities, which was illegal. Elodie was a larger woman. As the ride approached its final section, the lap bar failed to secure her adequately. Her partner Michael watched her slip and grabbed her leg as she went over the bar. He held on but could not maintain his grip. She fell at the last brake section. Emergency services attempted resuscitation for an hour. She died from cardiac arrest brought on by the fall. The investigation confirmed the illegal modifications, and the park manager was charged with involuntary homicide. The conclusion was unambiguous. If the safety bar had not been ground down, Elodie Duval would still be alive. The Formula One ride was completely dismantled. It never reopened. Action Park in New Jersey operated from the late 70s to the mid-90s under a philosophy that put guests in control of their own safety. What that actually meant in practice was a wave pool with 3 confirmed drownings, an alpine slide with a dead man and a broken brake, and an owner who ran a fake shell company in the Cayman Islands to absorb every lawsuit without consequence. Level 6. Action Park in New Jersey was less a theme park than a documented experiment in how many people could be injured before a regulatory body with actual authority showed up. The wave pool measured 100 by 250 feet, generated waves for 20 continuous minutes with only 10-minute breaks between cycles, and was packed with nearly 1,000 swimmers at peak times. By the time the park closed in 1996, 6 people had died across its various attractions. Not one executive faced criminal charges for any of them. On June 9, 1991, Kings Island in Ohio experienced 2 fatal incidents within a single evening. At around 8:30, a faulty underwater pump with exposed wiring electrified a decorative pond near the Oktoberfest area. 22-year-old Timothy Benning reached over to splash a friend, and the electric charge knocked him unconscious into the shallow water. His friend jumped in to save him and was electrocuted. A 20-year-old park security guard who saw it happening jumped in to help and was also electrocuted. Both the friend and the guard died. Timothy survived with severe burns. A $20 ground fault circuit interrupter would have prevented all 3 outcomes. The jetline in Stockholm 2023. A replacement part manufactured by a subcontractor of a subcontractor who was never told he could ask questions. A welder who made his best guess with 30-year-old blueprints. And a woman who died because the guess was wrong. Every single incident on this list was recorded because a camera happened to be pointing in the right direction at the wrong moment. What they captured was not bad luck. It was the end of a chain that started with a missed inspection, a modified sensor, a subcontracted weld, a safety bar ground down in secret, or a maintenance log that nobody read. The camera did not cause any of these accidents. It just meant that this time nobody could pretend they did not happen. Subscribe and drop a comment with the case that stayed with you longest, that stayed with you longest, that stayed with you longest.